Hi everyone, I'm Dawn McCaw. I am the Senior Career Specialist for Fine and Performing Arts from the Career Resource Center. And I'm so glad that you all joined. Okay, so I'm going to bring on our guest today. And let's see. Works. Okay, request. Perfect. Let's see. And again, thank you for joining this week's Arts Chat. And we have, hi, Dawn, how are
I'm
you?
doing good. It's finally working, so that's
I
good.
love it. I love it. So I'm Dawn and I'm interviewing Dawn. And is it Ruhren? Is that how you
Yeah, I
say
mean,
it?
I'm cool with anything. But it's Ruhren.
Ruhren. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I'll give you a brief introduction and then we'll get into it and you'll be sharing some information with our students. So Dawn graduated in 2023 with a BS in early childhood education with a concentration in art history. And right now she's a music education fellow at the Brooklyn Museum.
Yes.
Okay. So I also I'm so interested in your story, partly because you started out doing education, and then I believe you um, didn't do the student teaching, kind of knew you wanted to work within the museum, if I'm remembering that. And yeah, so if we jump right in and just ask you to tell us a little bit more about your career at the museum, that would be great. And I see we have some people joining, so it's great.
Yeah. So, hi everyone. My name is Dawn, and I am the School and Family Programs Fellow at the Brooklyn Museum. Um, and I guess I do two programs, right? School and family. So, in terms of school programs, my role kind of involves guided tours, specifically with K through 12 school groups. And our focus is kind of with three artworks. We go through three artworks in the galleries, and then we communicate with the teachers on what they'd want to see, specifically maybe regarding lessons that they're teaching in class. So usually topics that we discuss and talk about are art and activism, art and the environment, traditions traditions and symbols of power, and belief systems in communities. And then for family programs, my responsibilities kind of lie with multi-generational learning. So we have a few programs. One that I just did this Sunday was Families Create. So that is a few sessions with 4 to 6 year olds and their recurring students. And we take them to the galleries, and we have a theme for every single time. So this week was inspiration, and we took them to the galleries. We looked at things that inspired students, and then they made like little art pieces based off of what we learned, talked about in the galleries. And then Meet the Museum is for 2 to 3 year olds, and we specifically teach them museum etiquette and manners within going into museum space. And then there is also Sunday Art, which is like a free-form art making initiative open to all visitors. And we set up a table in the galleries, and it kind of allows participants to immerse themselves in creating art inspired by objects within the galleries.
I just wanted to say that there's a comment, such an excellent educator. My child has never been more excited to learn, and that's amazing. So I think that's from a parent. Um, so I love that kind of the intersection between the art, so the, museum work and working with children, because that was what you were studying. And just, I don't know why I'm saying this, but it's a great way for people to realize that it's not just educating through K through 12, um, through the education program and being New York certified, although that's great as well, but you really kind of taken your passion and made it work
Mm-hmm.
for you. So, and I know that from working with you, so I feel like I have a little bit of background, which is great. Um, yeah, so I kind of will ask you why or how you knew you wanted to work in a museum, because you did kind of pivot. Um, yeah, I think that would be the next thing.
Yeah, so like you were saying before, I studied early childhood education with a concentration art history minor studio arts. It's really long, but um, I originally had art education as my major, but my family, everyone was telling me that you can't get a career in art. That is impossible. So I did make that change to early childhood, and
Hmm.
it was in my junior year where I started substitute teaching, and I kind of got more teaching experience, doing field work. And I realized that I just didn't love working in a school district, though it's great and I respect everyone who does that. It just wasn't for me. Um, so in my senior year, I was like, I think I need to make some form of change. I don't know what yet, but something has to change. So that's why I kind of stepped out of my student teaching role, did early childhood studies instead, which I think is a really great option if you want to graduate on time. Still get that teaching experience, but not have to student teach and kind of take that time to do something else, which is kind of what I did. I was really looking into some form of education. So I was like, okay, maybe higher ed might be a good option. But I see that Dia Beacon in the Hudson Valley, kind of close to New Paltz, was hiring, and I kind of took that leap of faith, and it ended up working out, which was really wonderful. And I'm really honored that that happened because I don't think I could ever go back to doing something different. And I think that's really what changed everything, was seeing like that museum experience for the first time and behind the scenes. So that was really wonderful.
So great, because I love that you said take a leap of faith. I was just saying that to some art students today because, yeah, you don't always know, like in life with anything, how something's going to work out, but you had the courage to take that shot and the courage to pivot from education, from getting licensed. You kind of you knew yourself, so that's really, somebody just said, truly an inspiring story, which I agree 100%. And you really stayed true to yourself, and you are an educator, so you kind of did it all. um, so let me just see, in looking at your LinkedIn profile, I just saw all the things like the Dia Gallery attendant. And then, while you were at New Paltz, you just had so much great experience and were so active on campus. So I'm just wondering if you could share a little bit with what experiences you had and maybe just a few things that you learned through that.
Yeah, of course. So I feel like I was really crazy in New Falls because I tried to do everything. And sometimes it's a bit overwhelming, but I feel like you get so many experiences out of it. My freshman year, I was a gallery assistant at the Dorsky, and I think that's a really great step if you want to do anything with a museum. I think that's kind of one of the main reasons why Dia kind of hired me. They saw that and they asked me tons of questions about it in my interview. So that was a really great first step. In terms of like the leadership positions in New Paltz, I was an orientation leader, um, welcome center, so I answered all the phone calls for New Paltz and admissions, and I was a student union manager. And I think a lot of things at New Paltz offered a lot of translatable skills. So like orientation leader, you give tours, working with families. That was a really big one. I think that's one of the reasons why I got hired at the Brooklyn Museum in the first place, was because I worked with all those families during orientation. Welcome center, right? Communication skills to communicate with teachers and reach out before lessons. And then I had like additional side jobs, which I don't know why I did all of that, but it really did work out in the end. Right? I did the substitute teaching, which offered like differentiation within lessons. And then lastly was Dia Beacon, which kind of helped me transition into that museum space in the end.
Uh,
And
you know, I love all that. And I realized when you did the orientation leader, and student union manager, welcome center, when you started those positions, you weren't thinking, someday I'll be a museum educator. So being engaged and gaining those skills, which it's not the same thing as your academics, you learn a lot, but it's different. And so it's so important, I think, for students to get involved, and maybe not as much as you, that it depends, but just be an active member and to just go to a club and eat pizza. Like
Hmm.
to get involved. So yeah, it totally you are inspiring. Um, so maybe just like a project you're currently working on. Um, is that makes sense? That's
Yeah, so being part of school and family programs at the museum and working on the first ever family guide to come out for the museum, which is really exciting. Yeah, my first ever publication, so it's really exciting. So it focuses on 2 to 3 artworks per floor, and it's more of like a gallery go-to. So families can come look at the guide on their phone or bring their phone to the museum, kind of like a pre-visit, like warm up, and then they can go through the museum, do some activities that are related to certain artworks, like in their gallery go-tos, and kind of have a normal visit, but a learning experience as well without having to pay for a guided tour or pay for like an in-person class. So that's one thing I'm working on right now. And then as part of my fellowship, I'm working on a research program or research project, and the question that I'm kind of working on now is how can a museum guide tailored to families with neurodiverse students impact their experience at the Brooklyn Museum? Since I am working on this guide, it was kind of aimed more towards neurotypical students at that time, but I feel like what if there was something else that was tailored to students who were neurodiverse? What would their experience be like? Because I want to create more learning opportunities for students when they come into the museum, not just people who have access to all these resources to begin with. So yeah, I'm really, really excited about that, and I'm interviewing some professionals in the field currently, and then I'm going to have a try it out day on March 24th. So if you know anyone who's interested in kind of testing out this guide, I'd be really, really interested. So
so
really.
so to test out the guide to see how it works. I'll try it. I don't have children. I have a cat, but I could try it. She's very advanced.
Well, RSVP. I'm like giving myself a shout out. This is so
Yeah,
awkward. There will be an RSVP coming out soon on the Brooklyn Museum website if anyone is interested.
great, great. I also, it's great that the museum and your programs are um, helping bring access to families because this could be the families and the children their first exposure to a museum, right? And sometimes like this will be establish their love for museums and all the education. I didn't know that that's part of the mission, and I recently spoke to an alumna who currently works at the Met, and just learning more about the Met and all bringing the programs to people in the community and during COVID and different things they did to reach out because that is part of the mission. It's not just showcasing the art. So yeah, it's such great work. And I just saw another post about bringing Timmy and Tammy the museum again. So that's great. That's great. Okay. So, you know, I was just in a class, like I said, with seniors going out into the working world, and it can be intimidating. So, do you have any tips or any advice for them?
Yeah. Um, I think the transition was pretty hard, honestly, because you're in this like college environment for so long. It felt like so many years of my life, and you have like the constant presence of friends and like finding communities very easily, and maybe just going out to do some social activity like very spontaneously. And I still think I'm finding my roots right now. Right, I just relocated to Brooklyn this past September, and I was commuting 2 hours a day in the beginning. So I feel like adjusting is a little bit complicated, but I feel like it only gets easier. And I guess one piece of advice that I can share is kind of to step out of your comfort zone and like take initiatives to make those connections, whether it be like reaching out to a colleague or attending some sort of event or like an organization. And like finding that routine because it is a big jump from being in college to not. And I'm still in that process. Like I've only graduated in May. So it's been,
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I mean, for me, I felt like I was really good at being a professional student. And then I was like, oh, I have to go out into the world. And it's adjustment for everyone. And sometimes people don't realize that it's uncomfortable, and taking those chances and those leaps is so critical. And you're, like you said, you're doing it and you're adjusting, and it does. Um, I would say it does get easier, and then there's different challenges, but that's life. Another comment of how inspiring you are. So um, I agree, just from knowing you and kind of your process, and being really impressed that you have that, the self-reflection that, yeah, the education, traditional K through 12, in a public school might not be for me. I'm going to try and figure it out. Um, yeah, so that is great. So thank you. Um, what would you say are some administrative skills that you've picked up along the way that have really helped you so far? And even anything that you're still working on, because it's never over, the professional development.
oh my gosh, yeah, I feel like I'm still learning so much. But I think obviously communication is such a big one. It's very crucial in this role, like especially when it comes to coordinating with teachers before giving a role, right? Because you need to know what they're covering in class, so you can tailor tours to their lessons. Um, like knowing how many students are going to be there, how many chaperones, what materials do I need to bring, and I think the big thing is like specifically with differentiating lessons, right? If there's English language learners in those classes, or if there's student with disabilities, that's the main reason why I reach out and communicate with people beforehand. So you make sure every person is included in this lesson, especially when stepping into a place that's like a museum that they've never been to before. Maybe it's their first time ever visiting. So you have to really communicate with them
Yeah, it
to
makes such a difference. You really need to tailor it. That's totally, I love that you're so cognizant of different learning styles and working with neurodiverse children. And I always, going into a presentation, want that kind of information so that you can make it exciting for your population. That's great that you already are tuned into that. So yeah. um, let's see. So I'm going to say, share an obstacle that you have faced in your career, maybe just one of them that you haven't
oh my
mentioned.
gosh, yeah, the training period was so hard for me. I think, yeah, that was really, really tough. I was not expecting any of it when coming in. I feel like I had imposter syndrome when I walked into that museum for the first time because I was like, I didn't belong. I'm fresh out of college. And then the training was so intense. Like, I had like readings every night, like outside of my work. And we went really into like museum politics, and educational strategies. And we would have talks about it, and we really have to critically think about these things, and these were things that I never thought about before stepping into a museum setting. And we had like tour boot camp, and during this time I really did not feel like I was smart enough to be there in the very beginning. And I just being completely honest, I
No,
just didn't feel,
no, I'm glad. It's like imposter syndrome,
yeah, it really
right?
it really felt like that. So there was like those moments of self-doubt in the beginning. But like talking, I had a cohort, and like speaking with them, they've all gone through the same thing as I did. Staff went through very similar things. And these are professionals, like experienced people. So they definitely had tons of advice, and I
Yeah.
started to, get better.
It
And
was being a student again, right?
it literally was being a student again. Like these are all skills that I wasn't, like I just didn't have at first. Like these were strategies that we didn't do in a school system because it's completely different.
Yeah. And I'm just thinking, like the value of college is gaining those skills, the critical thinking, problem solving, teamwork, collaborating, leadership. And so those are all things that you are developing through your curriculum and things that you're involved with in college, and maybe you don't understand how that's going to apply, or how does your education help you in the workplace. And then you start realizing, oh right, I know I can critically
Mm.
think and be strategic, and what you're doing, you love. Like sometimes you have a class or two that you're like, oh, but this, you're passionate. So
Yeah.
it's a lot, but it makes a difference, right? When you're super interested in
Oh,
the hands day to
like
day.
definitely pay attention to those lesson planning like courses that you're taking because they are so useful. Like I use those all the time.
Yeah. They always say like the first year can be the toughest. There's like the most acclimating, and then also you move. So figuring out the housing and all the other things that are part of life. And it's good to hear that you were commuting 2 hours a day is super rough, but you made it work till you did something else. So not to put, you didn't let that put a barrier on you for this. I have a question here. Is there anything you could advise for art students who are struggling to find a job that doesn't entirely involve art making and just being taught about the industry?
Yeah. There's I feel like you have to try everything at this point, right? Like maybe even start at like a really like lower like entry level position because it's really hard to kind of just jump into something higher up. And I even know that there's so many places around New Paltz that like offer things like that, right? I started at Dia Beacon, and they hire so many New Paltz students because when I was there was like three other ones, and we were all doing the same thing, like doing our coursework during like lunch and doing that type of thing. So there's so many things around, and you might have to be able to move, which is a little bit difficult, but there are positions around. You just really have to look for
Yeah.
them and be yourself. I think that's a really big one.
A few to shout out the Art Effect in Poughkeepsie. Arts councils are good places. There's like women's studio workshop, but students can also come and talk to me. Not that I'm like plugging myself. There is also an upcoming, it's like Careers in the Arts program that it's over Zoom. Anybody can join. And it's going to be talking about careers in the arts, mostly like arts administration, arts management. So the behind the scenes, the
Mm-hmm.
art that's not actually making art, which is what you're doing, Dawn, arts administration. And so students can join on. We'll have at least over 10, maybe like 15, like nonprofits in the arts talking about different positions. And if they have internships, they'll talk about that as well. So, but that information will be out there if you're a student or an alum to join.
Just talking to people in New Paltz has been such a big help. Like I went to you quite often, Dawn. It sounds so funny when I say your name because I'm
Dawn, yeah.
yeah, I went to the Career Resource Center a lot, and I also talked to a lot of professors. Like they have so much experience, like working at the Met, for example, and then they can connect you to other people. I was talking to someone at the Met when I was a senior in college, and I got connected through someone like at New Paltz. So there's so many people around that you can network with.
I'm trying to think, what was their first name?
Emily.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And I was just at a program that was advertised to students at the Met talking about all the different careers, and Emily was talking about like accessibility is her area at the Met, and they were all different. So I recommend that program. Anybody who wants to reach out to me can definitely, yeah. I'm so grateful that you took the time to meet with me. Let me see. So, what would you say is something that you would say to your younger self? What advice would you have?
I think this is something I'm still struggling with, and I would tell my younger self that too. I think it would just be to not be so hard on yourself.
Mm,
I strive for perfection quite a lot, and even my supervisors notice it. Um, but I think I'm coming to realize that it's okay not to be perfect, and kind of focus more on growth. Like keep trying those new things and networking and seeking out different experiences. And I think it's okay just to ask for advice and ask for guidance and kind of trust that things will work out over time as long as you're trying.
yeah.
Um,
And sometimes
yeah,
they don't work.
that's true. But it's okay.
They can't make a mistake. I mean, I've struggled with the IG today, getting you on, and just made it work, but it's not always. If you can laugh at yourself, I think that's that's part of it. And realize yeah, you're gonna make mistakes, you're gonna learn, and as long as you move forward, you'll be fine. So thanks for adding that. Anything else you want to add before we jump off? I think you've shared such great information. This is helpful.
I would just say use those resources that you have in New Paltz. I think that really helped me in the long run. And there's so many around, like the Career Resource Center, Center for Student Engagement. There's so many things around. So just try
Because you were
everything until
so involved, which helped you. And like we talked about, you don't always know where experiences are going to help you. And to just jump in and know that you're going to be building your skills, and you don't always have to know where that will lead you, is really good. Oh, I'm so happy with some of these comments. Thank you everybody for joining. And Dawn, are you on the Orange and Blue Network?
I am, yes.
So is it okay if students reach out that way? They have
Yeah,
follow-up
of
questions? Okay, great, great. And I also just wanted to say, like you talk to professors, you talk to the Career Center, the Center for Engagement, and that's networking. Sometimes people are like, what's networking? You're connecting. So, another thing is that students could go directly to like the Brooklyn Museum or other um, positions at to see what they can apply for. You can go to the direct website or search on some other platforms that we have in the Career Center or just in general. So thank you for spending the time with us, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much.
Bye, Dawn, from Dawn.
Bye.
All right, we're going to jump off. Thank you.